Matt Mikalatos is a screenwriter and the author of books in several genres: comedy, theology, nonfiction, and fantasy. And he has a master's in biblical and theological studies and is a former comic book shop clerk. So his latest work is a graphic novel, God with Us, Bible Stories on the Road to Emmaus. Welcome back, actually, because we spoke several years ago on one of your fantasy novels. But Matt, so glad to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. It's such a pleasure to be with you again.
So, start here. What were comics to you growing up?
Oh man, so I remember my first comics when I was like maybe 4 years old, and I was just starting to read, and I loved them. I've been obsessed with comics my whole life. So my early comics were, giant robots fighting people, and Star Wars comics, and then pretty quickly Spider-Man, Superman, all those things. So they've been a big part of my life for a long time. And obviously, I worked at a comic book shop. Like, I can talk a long time about comics in pretty much any way you would like.
Well, I mean, when you pitched your idea for a graphic novel Bible, you actually submitted, I read this, a 7-page philosophical document outlining what you wanted to do differently than any other existing graphic novel Bible. So,
That's really funny.
since you are a fan and lover of comics, give us an idea of what was in that document.
That is so funny. I didn't know they told you about that. Yes. So two major things. Okay. One is that all of the really excellent comic graphic novels that are already out there, the way this book is different, there's two basic things. One is that I wanted to really take advantage of the graphic novel form to specifically tell the story in a way that only comics can tell it, which means this story happens. Jesus is walking on the road to Emmaus with the disciples and some children, and they're all telling stories to each other. So we're going back to Old Testament stories that reveal Jesus, and the people walking with him are telling him stories about himself. And we show that with the way colors change and the way panels go. And we'll have entire prayers that take up one page, like one beautiful splash page. So that's one big difference. And the second is a lot of the graphic novel Bibles are essentially illustrated Bibles, right? They just put pictures in with the words. And with this one, we're actually telling a story where people are investigating these stories about Jesus, asking questions. It impacts their life. So we can bounce back and forth, move through it. So it's less of an illustrated Bible and more of a Bible story that is being like there's some fiction piece to it that lets us make connections between Jesus in the Old Testament and the New Testament without in a different way than a lot of the graphic novel Bibles do.
Right. So it's not a Bible specifically. So
Right. But
it's almost like an introduction.
absolutely, it's full of Bible stories, all the ones you would hope, and then some weird ones that or I shouldn't say weird ones. Well, I think
Less
God knows what I
known.
mean. Some unexpected ones. The Valley of Dry Bones is in this book, for instance, or Moses holding up the golden or the bronze serpent on a stick for the Israelites, and then connecting that to what does that mean when Jesus is lifted up in front of all humanity, and that we can look to him to be saved. So it's trying to make these connections with stories that maybe kids don't typically hear in Sunday school. And in addition, of course, there's Jonah, there's King David, there's all those stories too. And of course, the gospel is in there too.
So because there's very little detail in this, part of the Bible, you have, like you said, introduced some creative liberties, we'll say. I want to get to that in a second, but
Sure.
you have introduced some kids. Can you
Yeah.
explain the kids' characters?
Yeah. So one of the things is if you're making a graphic novel for kids, you look at a lot of the different stuff we have for kids, and it'll be focused on the adult characters of Scripture. It makes perfect sense because if you're doing a straight adaptation, that's what you have to do. But my thought was what kids love about stories and about comics too is seeing themselves in the story. So I thought we're walking on the road to Emmaus. Everybody's walking because it's a festival day. What are the chances that there are children on the road? 100%.
Yeah.
So we took the two disciples that walk with Jesus, and then we brought in some of their neighbor kids that are also walking the same directions. They're going to be with them all the way. And they're asking Jesus questions. They're telling their stories of what they know about the gospel, which is so fun. It's so fun. And the kids I've heard from so far have said, like, this is amazing. I really feel like I was part of the gospel story, which is exactly what we want. All of us,
Mm.
right? We want our kids to feel connected and to feel like Jesus' story is something that relates to their everyday life.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so speaking of creative liberties, then some gaps to fill in. I feel like there's more and more Bible stories in Hollywood now, which is
Yes.
amazing. It's so cool to see it so alive in the public square. But as a screenwriter yourself too, you totally understand this. Can you kind of give a defense for these filling in the gaps? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who feel like if it's not only scripture, then it's not true.
Sure.
So maybe give a defense on that as a screenwriter. And then I want to also hear an example of where you took some fun liberties in this book.
Yeah. So if you look at, like, right, the big shows like The Chosen or House of David, part of what's happening is the way we tell stories in the modern world is really different than how the stories were told 2,000 years ago.
Mm.
The audience's expectation of what a true story sounds like is really different. We have different emotional connections. And one of the big things is details equals truth for people in the modern age. Like, if someone said to you, I went to the store and this, and this happened, you might say, what store? And if we say, whereas in ancient times, a story doesn't need to lay out how people are feeling, what's going on. How did Mary's parents feel when she went to them and said, "I'm pregnant," but no one was involved other than God? Right? We don't necessarily explore that, even though as a modern reader, we're like, "Oh man, that seems like a big question. I'd love to know the answer." So a lot of these Bible TV shows, what they're doing is saying, let's get into the real emotion of what it would have been like to be in that moment. And of course, are we getting everything right? No, no, of course not. But what we're trying to say is there is something beautiful and important and emotional that we should be paying attention to in these stories. And when it's done in a way that is reverent, that is honest, that is doing its best to be accurate and not go against what Scripture says, it can be something that causes our audience to re-engage with Scripture and say, "Oh, I never thought of it that way before. Is that what it actually says?" And then you open it up and you go like, "Yeah, I mean, you could get there. That's not what Scripture says, but there's something interesting there that illuminates something for me." That's what we're all trying to do when we're retelling Jesus stories: is draw people back to what we know is true in the Scripture.
That's good. And it's proving that it's working, which I think is,
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. I talked to so many people who have said that their faith has been in some way helped or encouraged by these moments where they're watching these shows.
Well, and even with this book, I mean, it's for ages 7 and up, but as an adult, I mean, this is what I love about graphic novels, and it sounds like your story is similar. It gets non-readers, reluctant readers
That's right.
really wanting to read. So even as a grown-up, seeing it through a different lens, I think can help re-engage in the Bible. That was the term that you just used.
Absolutely. And I think the great thing about comics specifically is if a kid loves a comic, they don't read it one time. They go back to it over and over and over. I have so many comics memorized, which I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do. And why not make it a comic that's about Jesus? The kids are
Mhm.
going to pick it up and go like, "I really love the way the story of Jonah is in this, and I just want to read it again." Like, that's cool. That's, if my 7-year old is going and picking up these Bible stories and wanting to just to look at the art, even,
Yeah.
that's really amazing. That's beautiful.
It says a lot. And actually, I did want to talk about the art because your amazing illustrator, Dave Shepard, sadly passed away before you guys got to release this book. And I'm so sorry for your loss. I was really shocked to see that.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and what a legacy. I mean, talk about your relationship and your vision, your shared vision with him.
Yeah, what's great about Dave now, the publisher, Waterbrook Multnomah, connected us and hired Dave. So I didn't know him before he came on the project, but it's a big book. It's over 200 pages, and he spent more than a year doing the art
Wow.
and passed away unexpectedly. He was relatively young. So it was a horrific moment for everyone. But the thing I think is really beautiful is that he was almost done he had done all the pencils, all the inks. So what was left was the coloring and fixing a few panels. And yeah, I think it's really beautiful that he has left behind this gigantic work. Like, it's not common that you get an artist who is able to do more than a year's of work on a single project because of the generosity of our publisher. So yeah, he's just a great guy, really easygoing, really kind, and incredibly hardworking. So it was definitely a loss. But
Mhm.
it's cool to me that there are kids right now and adults reading this book and seeing his work. uh, you know, a year later.
Amazing. Well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, lastly, why is this book just such perfect timing for Easter? Tie it all together for us.
Yeah, so this is an Easter story, right? It starts with the disciples walking away from Jerusalem and talking about everything that has happened over the last several years, longer than several years, even, as they're talking about the life of Jesus, right? And it's a beautiful Easter story in the sense that when he appears in front of them, they don't expect it to be him. They don't recognize it to be him, which there's a miraculous aspect to that. But also, he's dead, and they're not expecting him to come back. And the entire point of the story, what God with Us is about, is people coming to the recognition that maybe this amazing person, Jesus, who they knew, is someone even better than they thought, someone more amazing, more loving, and is God and is alive again. And it's an incredible, beautiful story in Scripture, and I really tried to capture that in this graphic novel.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's so attractive. It's a really, really great book from someone who loves comics. So there you go. Your standards were high. It's called God with Us, Bible Stories on the Road to Emmaus by Matt Mikalatos. I really appreciate you coming back on. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Kay.